at any point there's any trouble with the sound, do just let me know, and I'll be happy to then backtrack. But welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us and for your attendance this webinar on Train Your Brain. It is a pleasure to be here and to be able to present some really exciting information about the world of neuroscience and how it is now being practically applied in organizations in leadership development. And thank you, Ali, for that introduction. So that kind of saved me a lot of time introducing myself. So I normally share this one slide basically highlighting the key background information. One important thing is that my passion with the brain began many years ago, back in 1992, while studying at the University of California, Los Angeles, and pursuing my degree in psychobiology. Little did I know back then that psychobiology, the interaction of the mind and your biochemical physical reactions, would actually turn into a management science. Currently, I'm in the middle of completing my Master's of Science in Neuroleadership, and I'm also executing a research project based on this field of interest. Now, a lot of people ask me, what is neuroleadership? Now, interestingly, neuroleadership is the combination or the application of neuroscience, the last 10 to 15 years of all the discoveries that have been emerging from this field, especially with the advent of new technology, where we can now actually observe living, breathing people and their brain activity while they engage in various activities. So the advent of technology has actually accelerated things like fMRI, have facilitated neuroscientists better understanding how the brain works. Now, it would be a shame if neuroscientists kept all this valuable information to themselves. So what neuroleadership is basically the application or the practical application of the findings and discoveries of neuroscience to the world of business. In fact, it's so interesting that I've noticed recently neuroscience and the brain seems to be popping up in practically everything that we're doing now. You probably heard of neuroeconomics, even neuromarketing. Even I recently came across a book where you can actually learn how to think to be thin. Well, neuroleadership is basically how to think like a leader. So it's the application of neuroscience in maximizing human performance, productivity, such as in the areas of creativity, innovation, decision-making, change management, motivation. So you can see that practically we can actually extract a lot of benefits from this field. And today, in this day and age, in our organizations, we are no longer managing hands. Hire people with their brains. We are in a knowledge era. And in order to maximize knowledge workers, we need to understand what the brain is all about. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you some key insights in this webinar and our agenda is basically I will be sharing a basic introduction to the brain. Don't worry if you don't know your cerebellum from your cerebrum. I'm going to kind of give you an overview of key functional areas. And once we get an insight into the brain, we're also going to look at some of the limitations of our brain. And understanding these limitations is actually going to empower us to overcome those limitations in a way. And then we share some tips and insights on how to improve your brain fitness. Just like physical fitness, we're going to discover that if we can train our brains to be physically fit in its productivity, we can then enhance our performance, we can enhance our social relationships, we can enhance our emotional regulation, our decision making. The benefits are tremendous. So let's move on with our agenda item. The first agenda item is a basic introduction to the brain. Now, looking at the brain, this 3.5-pound blob this mass located in the skull. We don't get to see it often because it's so nicely hidden away. But we can imagine the intricacies of this object called the brain. Now, just looking at this picture, you'll see there's different areas labeled highlighting specific regions. I have a little hand here, so I'll be kind of pointing out certain areas to help you correlate the definitions for it. Here you can see the outer layer of the brain. This is called the cerebellum. And in fact, this is your thinking brain. And this is the area of your brain that is heavily folded and full of gray matter. Gray matter is basically your neurons. So the more gray matter you have, the more neuronal activity. So the more thinking basically is going on in this area. And gray matter is critical to cognitive systems. Over here you can see in the back, you will see your occipital lobe, and that has to do with your hearing. So this is the seat of the occipital lobe is the seat of your visual cortex, which detects and interprets visual stimuli. You also see your parietal lobe, which perceives and interprets your bodily sensations, just touch, pressure, pain, and temperature. So interestingly, different regions of the managing different activities in our body. It's movement, coordination, balance, posture, and also it appears lots of different types of learning. The hippocampus is the hippocampus is the part of the brain that develops early, and evolutionarily they say it's also developed early, and it's involved in learning and work memory. Your frontal lobe controls processes, control. Motor cortex is the part of the cerebral cortex that controls your movement. What's now clear is that each of us has a brain that is unique. Although on the outside they seem to be identical, the overall anatomy and the location of key brain structures is even similar across populations, but the pattern of your connections among your nerve cells and your neurons and the synapses, the connections between your brain cells, your neurons, are actually very unique, and they are developed as a result of your life experiences. So each of our brains, no matter what our age, is even a work in progress. It's constantly being molded by the environment that you are engaged in and interacting in. So basically what we learn, what we say, what we do, how we interact with others, and even, interestingly, what we eat can influence different, our structure, brain structures, and the connections that we make. Scientists now call this a phenomenon of a changing brain. They call it neuroplasticity. So it's like the brain is plastic. It's moldable. It's ever-changing. And that's why I think a lot of you are here today. You want to learn how to train your brain. How can you change it? If it's possible, how can you make it more, enhance its functioning, make it more effective? And so like I was sharing with you, people are even talking about training your brain to think like a thin person, or training your brain to think like a leader, or even a London cab driver. An interesting research coming out and published in Scientific American talks about how the London cab drivers have developed hippocampus structures based on the number of years of experience they have in driving in London. Apparently, the rules and regulations to qualify or get a license as a cab driver are really tough in London, because cab drivers need to memorize specific routes. Not only do they have to know locations, they need to know multiple routes to get from one point to another. So their spatial processing is highly developed. And in fact, the spatial difference can be actually detected in their brain anatomy. So people's brains can be changed. They can be changed from their experiences, from their interaction with the environment, and that's exactly what we want to tap into. A lot of studies have been done in which we now see that people can even change their brains just by thinking, so visualizing. Interestingly, it's hard to believe, but research has even proven that subjects were taken where they were asked to visualize that they were moving their little finger, right, their pinky, and just not even actually physically moving it, but just visualizing themselves moving it. And the testing done before and after of their pinky strength showed considerable difference. Without actually exercising, but just visualizing that they were exercising their pinky finger made it stronger. So this has a lot of implications, and now I really wish I could sit at my desk and visualize myself working out at the gym and really get into brilliant shape. I'm sure a lot of you wish you could do that, but maybe one day that could become possible. But this sense of changing our brain, neuroplasticity, lots of studies have documented this. In fact, even a study of musicians who play string instruments or the piano have exhibited structural changes in their motor cortex, the area of the brain involved in physical movement. So just practicing a skill in your mind's eye, visualizing a specific series of finger movements, for example, even rather than actually performing those movements, corresponds to affecting the brain structure in a relevant region. So findings such as these from the labs of neuroscientists are really exciting because they give us insights into the potential, the possibilities of our brain and what we can actually foresee doing with it. So, and I'll be sharing with you some insights as well, how to capitalize on this, how you can, some tips for you to actually start to work on developing your brain. So the saying goes that you use it or you lose it. Not just does it apply to your muscle structure, but it also applies to your brain structures. We even know that synapses that are not continuously used or activated in your brain, and synapses are basically connections between your neurons, they actually start to fade away. So, for example, if you relocate, you change your house, eventually if you don't use your address or you don't use your old phone number, you start to forget it. It's harder and harder. It gets harder and harder to recall things that we don't use on a regular basis, even if we've used it for several years. Right? And so this is basically changes in your neural real estate that takes place. Some things get really carved out or ingrained in our brain, and in fact, if you, some of your deepest memories, you will, if you reflect, they will be associated with some strong emotion. So we now know that emotions actually help to hardwire your memories, and we can start using information such as this when we train and develop people. If our training programs can elicit strong emotions and associate them with a particular concept, we now know that those concepts will be retained for a longer period of time in our learners' memories. So visualizing is not new. We've heard it a lot in the area of sports. Athletes visualize themselves, racing. They visualize themselves actually going over a course of a track. Even Formula One racers have been known to practice by actually visualizing and physically moving their feet and hands in coordination to gear changes and turns in a track, and that has actually impacted their performance as well. So the brain is an amazing thing. It's an amazing tool, and that's exactly what we want to tap into, and that's what I'm excited about, is the tremendous possibilities that our brains hold. So that's like your crash course introduction to the brain, what it's about and some of the major regions, and the key concept of the brain being plastic, that it can be molded. We can actually grow connections in our brain, develop specific structures in our brain, not just by using it, even just by thinking of using it has shown an impact. But at the same time, while our brain is an amazing instrument, it also has limitations, and that's what I want to share with you now. What are those specific limitations that we need to be aware of? And through that awareness, we can actually start to overcome those limitations. Now, the PFC is short for your prefrontal cortex. And if everyone would just put their hands on their foreheads, okay, and that is the area where you're resting your hand, is basically the area of your PFC. And the PFC is what we call our working memory. It is the area we use to make decisions, to understand things, to memorize information, to recall from our memory. And it is also an area for self-control. It's the center for our inhibiting system, or what we call the braking system. And this is a very important area of our brain. However, if you see this diagram, a lot of you might be familiar with the concept of the iceberg model. And basically what the iceberg model says is what is visible at the top, the portion of the iceberg, is about 10% versus what's underneath the water, invisible, the portion of the iceberg is around 90%. So similarly, the area of the brain that we call our conscious thinking is very small in comparison to the area of the brain that we call our non-conscious thinking. And if you compare it in terms of size, I've heard David Rock, who's an author and writer, and he's written several books on the brain, your brain at work, very interesting books and really useful if you're interested in learning more. He compares the PFC to the size of the PFC to the area of a 10 cubic meters. And he compares the size of the non-conscious brain to the Milky Way. So you can just imagine the area of the brain that is our conscious is really small in comparison to the non-conscious area of the brain. Now, obviously the non-conscious area of the brain is there for a reason, but what happens is we have never really learned how to tap into this non-conscious area. We have become as creatures of habit, and we become so focused on logic, on reason, and we have started to mistrust our instincts. However, those instincts lie in this non-conscious region. So if you can also compare the PFC to the RAM of your computer. So any of you who are really computer savvy, you can kind of correlate it to. It's your working memory. And if you are overloading your working memory, so if you have a lot of software open and you're trying to work on all of them at the same time, what's going to happen to your computer is it's going to get hung up. It's going to freeze. It's going to slow down. You're not going to be able to, work as quickly and efficiently on those softwares as if when you only open one software at a time. So the similar situation is with your working memory. It is a limited conscious resource, and it requires a lot of energy to function. It is energy intensive. Just to give you an example, of your caloric intake, your daily caloric intake, whatever you consume, approximately 20% of those calories are utilized by your conscious thinking, your PFC. Now that's a lot of calories, that's a lot of energy. It is energy intensive. So it's not something that our brain likes to use a lot of. In fact, what we have now discovered, our brain tries to put into our non-conscious as much as it possibly can. It tries to automate our activities, our thought processes, our decisions, and it tries to put us on autopilot because it is more resource useful. versus resource intensive. So keeping this in mind, the PFC is our thinking brain. What can we do to overcome some of these limitations? And so I'm just going to share with you some strategies on and some insights into maximizing this working memory part of the brain. If we look at the limitations one by one, and I'll just share some key points to you. Like I said, the PFC memory is very small. In terms of real estate, it's small, the size of it is small, and the amount of information even that it can hold is small. And it also, we said, it's very energy intensive. If you just math in your mind, I'm just going to call out sums, and where you are sitting, you can mentally or out loud the answer and see how it goes for you. If I ask you to add 1 plus 1, 2 plus 2, plus 6, 17 plus 58, did you notice what happened? The earlier sums came very quickly, easy. You didn't really have to think about it. And why is that? It's because, you know, we've all used these simple sums thousands of times, and we don't even think about it. The answer automatically comes. But when we are presented with a double-digit sum, it becomes a little more challenging. We pause, and we kind of resist it even. You're thinking to yourself, hey, I'm attending a webinar on the brain. No one told me there'd be math in this. I don't but you notice the resistance you felt to even answering that sum. And that's what we call this energy intensive. Your brain resists utilizing your working memory and to automate processes based on your experiences. Another example is how to drive a car. I remember when the car, I was like, so how does anyone drive? I mean, you have to move your feet, move your hand, you have to move your hand on the gear, you have to move it on the steering wheel, you have to check your mirrors, you have to keep checking, you have to signal, you have to remember the road rules and regulations. It drives you crazy. I remember when I was learning, my dad would keep telling me, I would get mechanics of driving that I would forget to actually look at the road. So now reflect on how you drive a car now. You don't even think about it. It's like automatic. Your hand moves automatically, your moves. In fact, you could be driving a car or going on a routine route. You're not even thinking where you're going. You automatically follow a routine path, office to home, home to office, and you don't even have to think about it. And while you're driving, unfortunately, try to use that time to do other things like talking on the phone or making a to-do list, which can be very dangerous at the same time. So I hope these examples give you an idea into the energy-intensive nature of the PFC, and which then forces us, or the brain, to use it, and the brain will automate processes. Limit is in our brain that it is serial. It can deal processes one thing at a time. Unfortunately, those who are common or regularly practice multitasking, it doesn't work. We think we're getting a lot done, but now neuroscience has presented research that shows that the quality and quantity of your work is decreased as a result of multitasking. Just to give you an example, suppose you and I were to have a competition. Let's have a contest. And we both had to drink 2 glasses of water each, right? So I take my 2 glasses, I drink 1 glass, and then I pick up the other one, and then I drink the other glass. But what you do, you say, no, I'm going to multitask. I'm going to pick up 1 glass, take a sip, put it down, pick up my other glass, take a sip, put it down, pick up the first glass, take a sip, put it down. Now, who that example, multitasking uses a lot of energy. You're constantly engaging, disengaging, and then re-engaging your brain. So it's like starting all over again. So our brain works optimally when it works serially, one thing at a time with complete focus. Not only do you get things done faster, but the quality of your product or your outcome is increased multiply, right? So serial, it's small, it's energy intensive, it's serial, and it is fussy. The brain, to work at its best, especially the PFC, needs things just right. And a lot of neuroscientists refer to this as the Goldilocks principle. So if you're familiar with the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Goldilocks tries out the chairs. One chair is too soft, one chair is too hard, and the other chair is just right. So your brain needs things just right. The internal conditions, the chemical environment needs to be optimal. It needs to be just right, not too little of catecholamines like norepinephrine and dopamine, and not too much. Too little creates less stimulus in your brain, makes you lethargic, makes you shut down, and too much creates overstimulus, which is also shuts down your logical thinking or your PFC. So there's this optimal area that we call the sweet spot, and that sweet spot can be different for different people. So you need to kind of figure out what your just right level is. So when you think about stress, right, some people work optimally under a lot of stress. They really work well, and if you cut that stress level in half, they feel like they're not getting much done. They start to feel lethargic and lazy and unproductive, versus that same stress level could be like overboard for another person, right? It could be like over what we call it takes them to a state of distress instead of optimal stress. So it's small. Your PFC has several limitations. It's small. It's energy intensive. It likes to work serially, so it goes completely against our modern lifestyle of multitasking, and it is extremely fussy. Now, keeping this in mind, how do we then optimize our brain? So on our agenda, that's what we're going to look at next. So basically, we looked at the structure of the brain. We looked at, within that structure, the limitations of our brain. And interestingly, if you're interested in the future, we can have more webinars on the subconscious, your non-conscious area. How can you actually tap into that for your innovation, creativity? You know, we've all experienced things like you have a problem, you sleep on it, you wake up in the morning and you have an answer. Now what's going on? Well, that's your non-conscious brain working. And your non-conscious brain activates when your conscious brain is quiet. So when you sleep, that's the ideal time for your non-conscious brain to wake up. Right? And so we can learn more about that. There's so much that we can share in terms of different applications of neuroscience to enhance your productivity. But I'm going to share some specific key insights, just the basics today, to get you started to improve your brain fitness. Now I'd like to ask a question. And Ali, if you can moderate this question. The question I want participants to answer is this one. So can you facilitate this for me?
Yes. Do you want me to ma'am, run this as a poll, or you want simply for them to share their comments?
Just share their comments. So maybe if they choose either option A, B, C, or they can write work, home, or other. And if you can give me like a summary of what you're seeing coming up, that would be great. So if participants can be guided.
Okay, folks, as you're seeing on your screen, the question is, where do you do your best thinking? The option A is at work, option B at home, or option C as other. Now you could put your comments or your inputs in the question box or chat box while we let Ms. Narejo to continue her presentation, and I'll give maybe after 5 minutes we would request for a pause, and I will share the comments which you guys will share with us.
Okay. Okay. Great. So do put in your answers. It would be interesting to see what everyone comes up with who's on webinar today. And in fact, this very question was conducted as a study in which 1,000 employees asked this question. And I'm going to share with you what the overall results were. But Adi, you have some answers coming in?
Yes. Well, too many things are coming. Well, most of the people are actually putting just the options, like option A, some at work,
A, B,
work,
C.
A at work, some says other, somebody wrote in park, walking, exercising, swimming. Somebody says B, sorry, somebody says again B at home, and we have depends only on the atmosphere, not the place. A, C, early morning around Fajr time, sunrise, generally at work, after office hours, and A and B both can happen at work, while traveling, moving in a vehicle, or doing anything out of the ordinary routine. Sleeping, somebody said. So they keep on popping up. So
Yeah. It really correlates with the findings of the study. Now, you would think that you would do your best thinking at work, right? That's why you go to work. You go there to think, you go there to solve problems, generate ideas, come up with solutions, strategies. All of this requires thinking. So in the study of 6,000 employees, interestingly, 80% said at work. Now this is kind of, if you're an HR professional, this is going to kind of wake you up. It's like cold water being thrown at you. So we call people to work to think, but only 10% can actually do their best thinking at work. And you know, it kind of makes sense. In our workplaces, there are so many distractions. You hardly get a moment alone to actually think. And so it's in the morning, you're like trying to, you know, do your thinking in the morning before people come or before you go to work, or when you get home, you try to, you know, do your work there, or on the weekends, or even in this study, 39% people said at home, and interestingly, the remaining 51% said other. So we know that it's when we are least thinking about work is when ideas start to come to us. You know, they automatically pop up. So 51% said things like when they're walking, or when they're, you know, playing with their kids, or when they're just maybe at a cafe with friends, talking, socializing. That's when their best ideas and thinking occurs. And I always say, well, at home, we know the room where the best ideas come at home, and it's called the bathroom, right? It's like whatever, when you go in there, whether it's you're taking a shower or you're brushing your teeth or whatever, it seems like ideas just come popping up. And it's, why is that? It's because when we are least focused on it, our non-conscious brain gets activated. That huge space, that humongous real estate kicks in, and we can tap into the power of our non-conscious. So a lot of implications come out of this study in terms of how do we maximize our employees' thinking and their cognitive fitness. So I'm going to share with you now some insights and some tips for you to take care of your brain and to improve its cognitive fitness. Basically, cognitive fitness is a state of mind in which we are performing well mentally, emotionally, and emotionally. And basically, it involves achieving a healthy brain state. So, and it's very similar to having a healthy body. So such as exercising the mind and body. So when you're exercising, it's actually also benefiting your mind. And we're going to see, I'm going to share some insights with you. Socializing, staying socially connected is also healthy for your brain. So let's start with the physical component. What if simple exercise could boost the rate at which your brain makes new neurons? Well, it does. Columbia University researchers even found evidence, so we now have scientific evidence that aerobic exercise does exactly that. And not only in mice, but they also found the same correlation of generating neurons in humans. So they put about 11 through 40 minutes of aerobic exercise 4 times a week for 12 weeks. And they measured the blood flow to the brain areas. And at the same time, they did a similar routine with a group of mice. The mice, they could actually then autopsy and evaluate the degree of brain change in specific regions before and after the exercise routine. And when they compared fMRI scans of the mice brain, they found the same changes were observed in human brains. So there was a pattern closely. And so this is evidence that exercise increases neurogenesis. So we create neurons through exercise. Wow. This is really new discoveries, because I never thought that whatever you were born have. But now we know better. In fact, even exercise increases your flow to your brain. So your brain gets more oxygen, it becomes more efficient, and good brain source of energy, so that glucose facilitates its functioning. Exercise has also been shown to enhance your memory, to enhance your learning, and thus resulting in even better performance in various studies in a range of cognitive tests. Exercise, as we all know, if you're feeling bad, if you even take a walk or you go to the gym and work out, your mood improves. So exercise, and where does your emotions come from? It comes from your brain. So exercise can even counteract depression. So there's substantial evidence that exercise has antidepressive qualities for the brain as well in various clinical trials. So physical exercise. So it's really important not just to have an amazing body and to feel physically fit, but it's so critical for your brain. So now we're even considering in the workplace eliminating seats, right? So instead of having people work and sit down while they work, a lot of labs are testing the concept of replacing the chair with a treadmill. So standing up, walking while you're working actually shows to increase your cognitive abilities. Now, the second area is the social. Your brain needs social connections. Human beings are social creatures, and study after study shows this. In fact, fMRI studies have shown that the same area of your brain that processes physical pain processes social pain. So for example, you're really excited, you have a great idea, you want to share with your boss, and you're like racing to your office, but while you're running up the stairs, you trip, you fall down, you skid your knee, you bruise it, but you get up, but you're so excited, it's painful, but you limp your way to your corridor, your office corridor, and down the hall in the corridor you can see your boss talking to one of your peers, and this is a peer that you kind of compete with, and they seem to be engaged in deep conversation. And as you approach, limping your way forward in agony because your knee is hurt, they both look up at you, they look at each other, and then your boss and your peer quickly part ways, and your boss hurries off into his office and shuts his door. Now what's going to hurt more? Your knee or your brain? Well, I'm not saying your heart, because your social pain is located in your brain. Now physical pain goes away. You know, your knee will heal. If you've ever broken a bone, your bone heals. And every time you think about that broken bone, it doesn't hurt. Okay, you remember it, okay, but it doesn't hurt. But social pain does not go away so easily. Every time you recall this incident where you were impacted, this social pain, every recall will re-trigger that pain. So good social relationships, interactions, connections are important for a healthy mind. And a lot of research is being conducted in this area, and we are noticing that we have specific neurons that we call mirror neurons designed for social connections. What do mirror neurons do? When you observe someone in physical pain, you notice how your facial expression also reflects their expression. It's as if you can feel their pain. That's your mirror neurons in activation. So a large part of our brain has developed for social interaction. So it means this must be important. If it wasn't important, it wouldn't be there. So social connections is critical for cognitive fitness. The third, nutrition, right? You are what you eat. Similarly, it's not just your physical body, it's also your brain health that is dependent on your nutrition. So a lot of studies and a lot of people have started to capitalize on this concept. So if you heard of omega-3, the fish oils have supposedly, there is research out there that shows enhanced cognition as a result of increased certain nutritional elements. And if you're interested, we can even have a webinar further on this area as well and share specific nutritional elements to enhance your cognitive fitness. Another area is your mental stimulation. So actually, work is good for your brain. It actually builds and develops neural connections. So if you notice, a good example is when people retire, and if they've worked their whole life, they really start to get depressed. They don't know what to do with themselves. Mental stimulation becomes a critical component of our cognitive fitness. We need this stimulation, not just for engaging ourselves, but scientists have now discovered, interesting research shows that in the US, 80% of autopsy, people who die of natural death, so autopsy of natural death, show the manifestation of Alzheimer's disease. But while these people were living, they didn't exhibit Alzheimer's. So scientists wondered, okay, what's going on here? These people, their brains have Alzheimer's, but it's there, but in their living time, we could never detect it. It wasn't impacting them in any way. So they did extensive research. So they analyzed these people who exhibited Alzheimer's on autopsy, but not physically while they were alive. They studied their background, where they were born, their educational level, their family environment, their diet, their social interactions, and they compared to try to find out a pattern. And interestingly, they found that people who showed extensive mental stimulation, even beyond retirement age, although they had manifestation of Alzheimer's, they didn't physically exhibit it, versus people who just retired. So you retired from work, and basically they also retired from life, showed not only physical manifestation of Alzheimer's in their brain, but also in their behavior. Their cognitive capacity was impacted. Now, what was going on? They compare it, or what you can do is compare it to the Amazon jungle versus a desert island with a single palm tree. So imagine the brain of someone who is mentally active to their last day. So what do? They have lots of social interaction, they travel, they're continuously learning and experiencing new things in their life. Their brain is like an Amazon jungle. So, you know, lots of connections, lots of vines, lots of dendrites connecting neurons together. And when Alzheimer's enters their brain, it starts to work. It starts to chop down those connections and kill off the neurons. But there's so many connections that the person dies before Alzheimer's can actually take over their brain. Versus a person who retires from work and also retires from life. They become secluded, they limit their social interaction, they don't learn anything, they don't travel. Their brain is like a desert island with a single palm tree. So the Alzheimer's comes in with its machete and goes whack, and it chops down that palm tree, and there you go, Alzheimer's manifests itself. So mental stimulation, in Islam we have a saying that learning is from the cradle to the grave, that learning should never end till your last day, your last breath. The person should continuously learn. And we know that now this mental stimulation has great benefit for your cognitive fitness. Recharge is another area for improving cognitive fitness. In today's day and age where we are constantly on emails, phone, mobile phone, SMSs, lots and lots of things to do, we're constantly on. And our brain is like a battery. It's like a rechargeable battery. If we consume all of its energy and we still try to push it, it can't work. So our brain needs time off. It needs to recharge itself. So things like rest, relaxation, doing things that you enjoy but are not strenuous on your brain, meditation, and in fact prayer has also shown tremendous benefit. I often share with people, so if you engage in regular prayer, whether it's throughout the day or even once a week depending on your faith, it's like you are recharging your brain. You are re-energizing it and preparing it to go back out in the world and to face the world and tackle all the challenges it may present. And the last area is sleep. Ask yourself, how much sleep do you get? Do you feel tired? Throughout the day, do you feel like you're forgetting things, forgetful? Sleep has become a very critical area for cognition. When we sleep, that is the time when our brain's non-conscious areas become activated. And in fact, your brain uses sleep, a specific state of sleep, REM sleep, to reconsolidate all the memories of the day with your previous memories. So if you don't get that chance to reconsolidate your thoughts and your experiences, you don't learn. You can't remember. Your efficiency drops. That's why one of the forms of torture is sleep deprivation. People who are tortured this way actually start to hallucinate. They lose their sense of reality. They lose their ability to think clearly and make rational decisions. So you can just imagine the impact of tips. Ensuring that you get some physical exercise, ensuring that your social needs are met, and if they are not being met, if you are experiencing social pain, one research shows that Tylenol, painkiller, social pain, because it's actually acting on the same parts of your brain that relieves physical pain. So maybe Tylenol could be a temporary relief, but you need to take action to relieve social pain. Your nutrition, your diet, very important. You need to maintain a constant blood sugar throughout the day to ensure that your brain is working optimally. Mental stimulation, lack of mental stimulation. Remember, if you don't use it, you lose it. So you want to keep stimulating, trying new things. challenging yourself. Keep growing new connections. You also at the same time want to take time off. You want to relax your brain, switch off those emails, turn your phone on silent, allow your brain to recharge. So meditation, prayer is also good channels to help in the recharging. And sleep. Sleep is critical for your brain's functioning ability. Sleep your memories, experiences, makes you more alert. Your perception of reality is greatly enhanced when you are getting a good night's sleep. So 7 to 8 hours for most adults is essential for performing at our best. If you find trouble sleeping, discovered a lot of smartphone apps out there that can actually help you to monitor your sleep cycle, and they even guide you on what you can do to enhance your sleep. So I hope that these points that we've covered in developing cognitive fitness will enable you to in order to. And imagine if you had your own personal cognitive fitness trainer based on the points. What would your cognitive fitness trainer tell you that you need to do immediately? Your brain's functioning, increase its fitness. What kind of training program would this trainer put you on? Clearly, cognitive fitness is there's several things we can do to enhance our cognitive capabilities. It's more than physical, it's more than mental, it's more than just social interaction or diet or stress management, or even it's more than just adequate sleep. It's about getting the right balance of all of these. Each factor is important, but even more important is putting them all together into your personal cognitive plan. So I hope that as a result of attending you all go out there and train your brain. So Ali, I'll hand it to you now. And while Ali is coming on, I just want to also let you know, if you're interested, a copy of these slides, I'm available on SlideShare. If you just Google or you just search Rahila, you'll be able to find me on SlideShare, LinkedIn, Facebook. Posting these slides on my SlideShare account.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Narejo. Folks, now we are open for the Q&A. You could either raise your hand. There's a hand icon on the webinar console, and if you raise your hand, I'll be able to give you an opportunity to speak to Ms. Narejo. I see there are a couple of hands already raised, or you could put your questions in the chat box and I'll read them over on your behalf. So let me go to the first attendee. Let me try to unmute Ms. Zainab Ahmed. Zainab, can you hear us? Could you please introduce yourself and ask a question? Ms. Zainab Ahmed.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Zainab. Could you please go ahead and ask your question after introducing yourself?
Yes.
No.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. My name is Zainab and I'm a freelance writer based in Islamabad.
Hi, Zainab.
Lovely hearing you talk. I'm really interested in NLP and a lot of it. Hi, Rahila. Anyway, so my question was, I had several questions. The first one is, since you're in HR, and if, for example, you have a team of freelancers working for you, then I've noticed that there's a lot of issues getting people to deliver work on time. With your experience in HR, how would I get keep people motivated and productive, keep myself motivated and productive to meet deadlines consistently? Thank you.
Okay. Talk now?
Yes, Ms. Narejo, you can answer the question.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Zainab. And basically, you're asking about if you're not in a regular, what we call like a normal environment with a 9 to 5, and you're working in a freelancing role where you are more independent and you set your own hours, and you have to deliver according to some specified objectives and deliverables. This can be challenging, especially since our brain has a tendency to wander and become distracted very easily. The best way that I would recommend is you allocate for yourself your optimal working hours. So everyone does not work best, nor does everyone work best in the evening. We have our optimal brain clock, where the maximum productivity is achieved by our specific brain. Like for me, it's early morning. My brain is really alert, it's active. In 1 hour, I get 3 hours of work done if I try to do it in the afternoon. Afternoon time is my downtime. Other people are really slow in the morning, but they pick up as soon as the clock hits 5 o'clock. They get energized and the brain wakes up. So first, that to share with your team to pick their optimal working time. That's the beauty of being a freelancer. If you were stuck in an office job, you're stuck with a 9 to 5 routine, and that might not be your best time to work. So fix a time and limit yourself to maximum 1 hour blocks. If you try to force yourself to do more than an hour, your brain starts to shut down. So after an hour, take a little physical break. So get up, walk around, stretch out. Remember, physical activity stimulates the brain. At least minimum 5 minutes. Realize, and then sit back down again for another focused hour of work. So I hope that helps you. A few tips there.
Yes, Zainab, I know you have a few other questions, but I believe because of the constraint of time, let me move to another attendee who has another question. So I hope you're satisfied with the answer given by Ms. Narejo. Let me move to the other attendee. We have Brother Fahim Lia. Fahim, can you hear us? Hi, Brother Fahim Lia.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, brother, could you please introduce yourself and ask the question?
Yes. My name is Brother Fahim. I'm calling from Camden, New Jersey. And I put my question in the chat box, but since you can hear me, I'll say it right now. How does this research relate to people being right brain or left brain learners?
Yeah, good question. A while ago, scientists or popular culture really highlighted the fact of left and right brain. But now we are understanding that it's not just about using part of your brain. We all use our whole brain. But there are specific activities that are controlled by certain portions of your brain. If you are a right-handed person, your right-handed sidedness actually influences your left brain to be more logical, work more on process-oriented, more serial-oriented, more detail orientation type of activities. And your right side of your brain is more fast or out of the box, more what we can call spatially oriented. So that's what we call your creative side. But interestingly, what studies have shown, if you are left-handed, it's the opposite.
Hello.
Yes, Ali?
Oh, sorry. I think we had a brief disconnect. So I'm sure the answer is given then because I lost the voice also myself. So let me move to another attendee, Mr. Brother Hadi Bitar. Mr. Brother Hadi Bitar, can you hear us? You raised your hand and hello, Brother Hadi. Okay, let me move to the question box, chat box. There's an interesting question. The question is, does concentration actually suppress your thoughts and your brain doesn't become receptive to coming thoughts?
Yes, that's true. When you focus too much on something, so you're utilizing a lot of the resources, so you're using your PFC, and that focus actually shuts down your brain's ability to have creative insights or to look at things with a different perspective. So interestingly, what we're now finding is the practice of brainstorming is not get into a room and everyone has to shout out ideas in a limited amount of time, and you're going for quantity, really focused thinking that we're doing. Actually, good ideas don't come because of that focus. Concentrating so hard actually shuts down your creative part of your brain. What we're now discovering is that instead of focusing so hard, you could view that dilemma, then relax, go do something else. Then your brain is working, subconscious brain is working. And then after a while, come back and then share your insight. What came to you while you were working on something else? So concentrating too much on one thing, your thoughts, especially your thinking.
Okay, we have another question. How can, from Brother Muhammad Ali Khan, how can one determine Alzheimer's disease affecting our brain?
It impacts your so normally we see it being exhibited in elderly because it's time to actually manifest itself, and it starts to actually destroy particular areas of your brain, cognitive thinking. So Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, these are diseases that affect your brain's functionality. So a lot of scientists are interested in discovering how can we minimize or how can we curb the onset of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. This is becoming more and more important because we are in an aging population. Globally, we're seeing a trend where our populations, we are living longer, we have better lifestyles, we have better intervention in terms of medical care. So we are living longer, so this means diseases related to the brain, especially age-related diseases, are now becoming more prominent. So that's one of the key areas where a lot of neuroscience research is now being done in.
Right. There's another question from Brother Ibtisam Al-Rawdan. It's an interesting small question. I think I'm sorry, it just scrolled down. I think, yeah, regarding the yeah, it's about the headache and how should we manage it if it happens. It's a small one.
Yeah, well, headache, you can, headaches are basically, again, it's your pain center of your brain that is being activated. And it could, depending on the source of it, you know, is it because of a lack of sleep? It could be a dietary, nutritional deficit. It could be overexertion, so the balance, the homeostasis of your brain is going too much to the left or right, and this imbalance headaches as well. So this is normally would be pain medication. Pain is temporary, so you want to go back to the root. What is actually the source of that headache? Interestingly, 80% of all disease, the root cause, occurs when your homeostasis. So remember, I said Goldilocks, brain wants things just right. That balance is off is when we start to experience different manifestations of pain. Headache is one of those manifestations indicative of stress. Even it can go to physical pain such as neck strain, shoulder strain, calf strain, insomnia, indigestion, palpitations. Did you know that diabetes, hypertension, even arthritis, a lot of these diseases, the root cause is stress. And what is stress? It is an imbalance in your homeostasis of your brain, where your brain is constantly on. And being constantly on, our brain is not designed to be in a hyperactive state. Hyperactivity creates a release of neurochemicals and hormones